Dancing Identity in a Strange Land, Visibility and Symbolism by H. Patten. By the rivers of Babylon, where we sat down, and there we wept when we remember Zion. 'Cause the wicked carried us away captivity, required from us a song. How can we sing King Alpha's song in a strange land? Rivers of Babylon, a Jamaican traditional and Rastafarian chant. Africans taken away without tools were able to rebuild material culture from the blueprint of knowledge carried in our collective heads. Caroline Cooper, 2004. Echoing the Rivers of Babylon lyrics, this talk is concerned with the politics of black bodies performing within Britain, a strange land wherein a psychology of racism exists that makes them invisible on one hand, whilst harvesting and commoditizing the cultural expression they produce on the other. I therefore want to explore the creation of black countercultural spaces, Beckford 2006. Alternative spaces such as blues and house parties, church and school halls, clubs, and various temporary entertainment venues within which black bodies perform in Britain. Having attended numerous British Jamaican dance sessions from childhood, I will reflect on how black bodies themselves become alternative countercultural spaces in which King Alpha's song, the Lord's Song, is performed through dance. Conceived in Jamaica, but growing up in Birmingham, the culture surrounding Caribbean dance made it possible for me to embody the material culture Caroline Cooper, a Jamaican writer and scholar, describes as being rebuilt from the blueprint of knowledge carried by enslaved Africans. In my case, dance in and through sound system culture, featuring lovers rock, dub, and reggae dancehall. This talk examines the dance within sound system dance sessions, focusing on how the symbolic gestures, movements, attitudes, and values foundational to a lived African Caribbean cultural expression manifest in what I call ancestral knowledge communication. Drawing on what many people acknowledge as cultural memory, I go further in incorporating the spiritual cosmology out of which Jamaican sound system culture has emerged, before its recreation within dance sessions in Britain. The creation of alternative black countercultural spaces. Oppression has been inscribed upon black people's bodies, beginning with chattel enslavement and the transatlantic slave trade throughout colonialism, and has continued with the migration of African Caribbean people to Britain. Racist attacks, such as the murder of Stephen Lawrence in 1993, through to the 2018 Windrush scandal, demonstrates Britain's deep-rooted structural racism. Black dancing bodies have been instrumental in resisting the hostility black people have endured in British society. Dance exists within most human societies as a mode of communication. It facilitates spiritual, cultural, and individual expression, as well as the negotiation of identity, sexuality, gender, hierarchy, personhood, and profile. Dance clearly functions also as a means through which bodies connect, expressing pleasure dynamically or sensually, or in intimate contact with others. Crucially, dance enables each individual to move in a way that embodies the symbols and codes that are important and recognizable within their particular culture and experience. For example, ballet places emphasis on clean lines, physical control, psychological and muscular strength. Dancers may hold the torso still and stand on one leg, whilst lifting and extending the other leg, defying gravity to create a straight, vertical line, reflecting a society where dance predominantly serves as an aesthetic function. African Caribbean dance similarly demands strength alongside stamina and emotion. For example, bouncing and dipping while stepping out, then bringing the other foot together in an alternating two-step, or pulsating and undulating while sensually circling the pelvis, broken up by an alternating sideways dip of the torso. Performing the reggae bounce and rock-steady dance all night reflects a society in which dance is a lived, functional practice. Each culture employs and positions dance according to the importance dance plays within their worldview. Within African Caribbean cultural worldviews, dance serves a primary function in being performed as part of the major birth-to-death life cycle celebrations, including birthdays and birth nights, coming of age, weddings, funerals, etc. Yet historically, from a Western perspective, black bodies have been dehumanized, stereotyped, and over-sexualized, causing black dance practices to be dismissed as being unsophisticated, lewd, with no technique base, and little artistic value within mainstream British arts practice. In resisting these negative perceptions and the Western terms used to categorize black bodies dancing, I adopt the term African/Neo-African, meaning New African, including diaspora Africans, to replace terms such as black people, black dance, traditional or folk dance. Given the central importance of dance in African Neo-African societies, it is of no surprise that on arrival in Britain, African Neo-African people developed alternative spaces to continue the celebration of major life cycle events in response to their exclusion from white-owned mainstream clubs and ballrooms in the 1950s and 60s. This heralded the emergence of regular house parties and blues, also called shebeens or shebeens, paid entry house parties, often held in basements and or abandoned buildings. Dance sessions, whether house parties, blues or shebeens, even present-day dancehall sessions, are established by the setting up of sound system sets, the portable music systems with banks of speaker boxes pumping out heart-pounding, clothes-vibrating, heavy wattage music within varied locations and spaces. The gathering of people, called the massive, signals the start of the dance session alongside the sale of food and drinks to raise additional funds. Despite the confining space within house, blues or shubeen parties, I have fond childhood memories of watching skilled dancers perform rock and roll. Feet flashing, flicking outwards, knees moving in and out, reminiscent of the Junkono Pichi Pachi masquerade or the US Charleston dance step, as females spun and circled, skirt tails billowing and swinging around well-creamed or stocking-covered legs. These individuals recreated the lived African Neo-African cultural expressions of home through countercultural spaces created around and within their corporeal dancing bodies. The corporeal dancing body. The body, taken over and subsumed by dance, music, and the spirit, undulating and pulsating to the rhythm, radiating movement through every bone, every muscle, every organ and cell of your being. Movement of the distant and recent past mixed with movements of the present, injecting a dynamic life and high energy vibe from within, moving outwards beyond the boundary of the skin into the atmosphere. This is how I can best describe what I call the corporeal dancing body. The concept of the corporeal dancing body connects the physical body, the past, present, and future to free the soul from the weary corpse-like shell representing the body most African Neo-African people exist within on a daily basis, whilst being confined, made invisible, marginalized, and branded a problem merely because of their skin color. The term corporeal dancing body allows Black African bodies to regain personhood and connect with the spiritual. Through the performance of dance, the corporeal dancing body permits the life and soul to re-enter human fleshly bodies, connecting emotion, the physical, and the spiritual worlds all at once. I experienced this in the 1970s when sound system operators would drop tunes like Warrior Charge by Aswad, causing almost everybody in the dance to break out and perform dynamic, skillful, and intense skanking dance steps. Straight legs working against angular knees jerking with alternating heel and toe foot actions. Torsos bent forward, some almost 90 degrees, alongside arms punching the air as a heavy music bass line pumped through the veins. In this context, I have witnessed Black bodies transform and become the alternative spaces in which King Alpha's song continues. The rhythm-filled corporeal dancing bodies described here both reject and turn on the head Western ideas of order, respectability, and decency. They simultaneously establish and underscore the African Neo-African worldviews they are grounded within. Serving as conduits, these bodies allow the gathering of the collective heads of the massive from within the African Neo-African community to generate a renewed collective memory I call ancestral knowledge communication. Central to the idea of ancestral knowledge communication is the sense of personhood, as each individual can gain a sense of being samadhi, becoming somebody of worth. Dance provides a space wherein individuals gain visibility and profile, especially those perceived as being inferior within British society, through the free expression of self. Symbolic gestures and values. If the corporeal dancing body signals the freeing up of emotion and the combining of historical African Neo-African events, then in Britain, religious and social spaces serve as creative safe spaces. African Neo-African people began focusing their attentions on the reconstruction of their own worldviews and symbolisms using cultural expression. Through the music and dance occurring within sound system dances, important stories and mythologies are recorded and represented, whilst historic events, individuals, and locations are memorialized. An example is the legacy of enslavement and the trauma manifested and employed in African Neo-African popular dance, music, and other forms of cultural expression as physical healing processes and survival tactics. Growing up as part of the Windrush generation, in reflecting on my early experience of dancing, the execution of the Chucky dance to Rupi Edwards' 1975 single Irie Feelings, Skanga, involved sharp shoulder twists and jerks as each shoulder jerks forward and back on alternate sides. The spine curves with the forward jerk and arches on the backward jerk. Decades later, the Bogle dance to Buju Banton's 1992 hit required pulsating ripples traveling up the full length of the spine, with arms relaxed or raised in a circling motion. Despite the deep feelings of enjoyment and unity created in performance of these dances, both equally manifest deep resonances and symbolisms with the spinal reflex to the traumatic crack of the whip Africans suffered during enslavement. The Bogle dance further serves as an example of memorialization. Although the dance creator Gerald Bogle Levy was murdered in 2005, he is often toasted and his name called by many whenever Buju Banton's song of the same name is played. The popularity of the dance still commands most people, young and old, to enthusiastically move their bodies and perform boldly to their own standard and ability. Likewise, Jamaican singer Millie Small is forever memorialized by her 1960s hit My Boy Lollipop, as is the Jamaican spirit of dance, particularly in Britain. Involved in ska dance is the throwing of arms up and down, in and out, with pelvises swaying side to side. However, the fact that those very arm movements originated in the Jamaican African Neo-African spiritual ritual called revivalism remains unknown to most. Yet the connection of ska to revivalism symbolizes a conscious and or subconscious Jamaican resistance act, connecting back to the African Neo-African uprisings that formed part of the historic Jamaican Baptist Wars of 1831 to 1832 and the Morant Bay Uprising of 1865. Both events were instigated by spiritual leaders who used the power of the African Neo-African revival and Kumina spiritual dances as tools to inspire courage and the spirit of liberation amongst the Jamaican people. The spiritual underpinning of ska certainly adds a unifying dimension to the dance. Today, ska draws dance crowds of all races together in its performance, while leaving space for individual creative expression to shine through. A leg lift or a little shuffling heel and toe step injected into the dance is often enough action for individuals to stand out from the crowd. Spiritual cosmology and symbolisms. In the 1970s and 80s, many of the Windrush generation and their children found themselves negotiating identity through the music and dance styles they chose to adopt. Those following the more cosmopolitan soul music were referred to as soul heads, many of whom would attend the multiracial soul clubs held within mainstream spaces. Those preferring reggae, dub, lovers rock, and later dancehall music were called rootsmen or rootswomen and often attended black-owned clubs and spaces. These represented a symbolic choice between embracing a black British identity or, in rejecting that, constructing a Caribbean and or Pan-African identity outside of both homelands. This also foregrounds a racial politics that was played out through cultural expression, but rarely discussed. Stylistically, rootsmen wore American Farrah slacks or drainpipe pants, straight-cut trousers, and classic leather or suede-trimmed Italian gabici jumpers or silk shirts. Females generally wore blouse and skirts, that is, pleated or straight-cut pencil skirts, with their hair hot comb pressed or natural, sporting afros, plaits, flying saucer hairstyles, or head wraps, often matching their outfits. They were always elaborately styled, despite the physically darkened space in which the blues or shubbings took place. Importantly, the dance movements reflected the spaces in which they were performed. I have attended many dances where insufficient space was available for large gestures to be performed. Frequently, within blues or shubbing parties, everyone moves en masse. Often, bodies were forced to remain rooted to the spot where they stood and rock to the body-penetrating rhythm of the megawattage sound system. When the dance session became ram or cork, that is full to capacity, the music would change to lovers rock and serious partner dancing would begin. Coupling up, male and female bodies would dance the rub-a-dub. Locked tightly together, bodies unite and rub, scrub, or dub each other in dance. This intimate form of dance involves pelvises moving as one, scribing a full circle for the round-the-world dance. Other pelvises scribe a figure of eight, moving in and out of each other, while some merely rock hips in semicircular fashion, maintaining constant contact, their movement barely visible to onlookers. Linked to the fashion of the day, this style of dance initiated the ecstatic phrase, "dub out every pleat in a skirt," reflecting the ironing out of pleats by hot dancing bodies. Each movement could be performed at varying speeds in relation to the 4/4 musical beat, demonstrating the ability for black bodies to aesthetically express intimacy and affection. The union of bodies, rubbing, pressing, moving together, thought, flesh and spirit, one entity, slowed breaths, and synchronized heartbeats, demonstrates the spiritually ecstatic moment of immense enjoyment that is both an orgasmic, transgressive, and spiritually transcendent encounter, in line with Ralph Norman's Jouissance interpretation. Here, black African, Neo-African corporeal dancing bodies take control in expressing their sensuality on their own terms. Importantly, the spiritual is symbolized both during the connection of two individuals dancing intimately, in complete synchronicity, and in those moments of heightened unification, camaraderie, and sense of community, emerging when multiple bodies move en masse within the space. In the gathering of African Neo-African bodies emerges a renewed cosmology in which knowledge is carried in our collective heads, Cooper 2004, facilitating performance of the past, present, and future, combining the spirit and the material world within which ancestral knowledge communication may take place. Despite adopting what may seem to be divergent cultural or aesthetic roots, whether that of the rootsman and rootswoman or that of the soulhead, through cultural expression, most individuals reconnect with and embody a material and spiritual root identity, enabling them to perform King Alpha's song through dance.